Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Hello, this is Mike McMahon. I'm your host of Harvesting Wisdom. Today I have Consuelo Matus,
Yes.
and I have Amanda Hicks. And you guys are from the Sunland STEAM Academy. Mm-hmm. So we currently, with UFE, are engaging with you guys on some really cool stuff. You got your students are talking to our students in Zimbabwe. We're doing garden stuff with you guys. We just started some of that stuff, and so I'm gonna go back and forth to both of you because I got a million questions, but I'm gonna try to give you more of the time to talk. But Consuelo, on your resume, it's pretty impressive. You're a STEAM teacher.
Yes.
And I don't know the difference between a STEAM teacher and what is a STEM teacher or a regular teacher. But you also have a background in gardening,
Yes.
and you've done it on 2 or 3 different schools, right?
Mainly at Gila Crossing Community School on the Gila River Reservation.
Okay. And what's the size of what you did? What did you grow? And what grade levels?
It was a school-wide garden
wow.
because it was included in these specials. So, you know how kids go to PE or go to art or go to music. Well, one of the specials was going to garden. So
Okay.
they started from kinder. It was a K-8 school. So the kinders, they got to plant. So they got to see all the planting, and they did all the stalks and everything. So then as the grades go on, kids started to weed the garden. And then they all took care of the watering in 4th grade, which is what I was teaching at that time. Mm-hmm. We were in charge of cooking the food from the garden.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
And it turned into a traditional banquet. And we invited the community.
Yeah,
and
what a great model.
It was a lot of fun, and it was STEAM. It was STEAM based, and because cooking is a physical science.
Sure.
And so we also had experiments on tasting between farming or organic food, I should say, and commercial food.
You don't see that all the day.
So,
The
yeah.
Pepsi challenge.
Exactly.
So to speak,
That's
except
exactly what it
for
was.
something that's nutritious.
You're right. So, so the kids, they were tasting, because we were growing tomatoes and jalapenos and cilantro, which is salsa ingredients. So we were making like pico de gallo. And so they would taste that versus something that was store-bought. So, that was part of our little traditional banquet.
So that's like a beautiful model for what we want to try to do as well, to some degree, and getting the community involved and getting the banquet sometimes is a challenge because the school districts, you can't eat together, you can't do things after school and all these other things. But I got a few questions to follow up with you on that. One of them is the kids, when they started at kindergarten, by the time they get into 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, are they pretty kind of familiar with the garden? They understand how a seed grows and time of year and when to harvest and if it's ripe or not ripe and what the different foods taste like?
Oh, definitely, because the history, Native American history, the calendar is different. So their calendar starts in June, which is because that is time to prepare the soil. And so the whole calendar goes with the garden itself. And being able to plant the Three Sisters crop.
I love it. I'm doing that in Africa right now because they just grow corn, and I'm like, they're depleting the soils.
Right.
With the Three Sisters, you have the legume, a bean or peanut or whatever that climbs on that corn, but that affixes nitrogen from the air.
Yes.
So you're rewarding the soil, and then the squash or whatever your gourd you're growing
your
or
gourd,
whatever is the leafy greens, which they eat in Africa, by the way, not just the fruit, but
Right.
it shades the soil, especially in a climate like this. But that's really great and I know that is a Native American tradition, but not used everywhere. The issue with it, I think, is that it really requires more manual labor
Yeah.
because you can't get a machine in to do corn, squash, and beans at the same
Right,
time.
because they grow in between each other.
Right,
So,
right.
you know, you can't be, you know, putting a machine in there to do all the weeding or, you know, whatever it is that you're doing with it, because you're going to ruin the other crops.
Right.
So, yeah, so by the time they got to 8th grade, they knew how to plant and take care of it. They knew their history. They knew the Canal System, which is what the ancestors of the Gila River.
Well, we're still living off of it.
Yeah,
Really.
so we're still using the same canal system according to SRP. So, so all of that was part of the whole curriculum over there.
That's great. Now, Amanda,
Yeah,
you're the principal over there.
I am.
So you just brought in our system, and you're lucky that you found that I don't know if you even knew she was doing gardening beforehand, but you found out you had the resource there with her.
Absolutely. So we actually had a gardening club that started up at the beginning of last school year. And the teacher was new, and so she felt a little bit overwhelmed with it. And so we were looking for someone to kind of take it over. And so Miss Matus wanted to take it over. So we actually moved all of the garden beds outside of the 3rd grade wing. And so they'd started a garden last year, and they had also collaborated with our music teacher and made a sound garden. And so that was part of their STEM showcase at our STEAM night last year. So they started it last year, and obviously a lot of it died off in the summer because we didn't have an irrigation system to
We
it.
didn't have kids there either.
Absolutely. So when Joe brought up the idea of, do we want a garden? And I said, absolutely. We definitely want something, and we want something that's sustainable. And so I knew that Miss Matus was very interested in gardening, and so I thought it was a great fit for our 3rd grade.
Good. Now, tell me the whole I have a degree in engineering and another one in the architecture department, but the STEM word I never really knew, and even in industry with the businesses. And it's something used really as educators because there's no such thing as I've never seen an application or, that you're STEM manager number 1 or whatever. It's a combination, a multi-discipline combination. And I've heard STEM, and then, and I always wondered, why is it only STEM? And now yours is STEAM.
Yep.
So walk me through that.
Yeah, so one of the goals of the Roosevelt School District, and we're in South Central Phoenix, is to have signature schools at each of our schools. So a couple years ago, we went through a process where we looked at different approaches that we could have in our school. And so right before that, they had put a STEM special in, and a special area classes is something like PE, music, where all of the kids go to that weekly. And so STEM had already been introduced, but we had a long history of the arts as well. We have a dance company that has been at Sunland for about 20 years now. Wow. We like to do performing arts. We have a ballet folklorico group. And so the arts was something that they really were proud of at Sunland. And so with STEAM, that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, it's a multifaceted approach for incorporating those different aspects into what you teach on the daily basis. And so we felt like that really was the best of all of the worlds, because we were fascinated with STEM, but we also love the arts and value that. And so marrying the two really was a great fit for our community.
Yeah, and we put in these little, we call them STEM gardens or STEAM gardens, whatever you want to call them, but really they're kind of a Trojan horse to get into the school. Because as a landscaper, I want to change the campus environment from an institutional environment to a park-like setting.
Yes.
And I want to turn the entire thing into a sustainable growing area.
Absolutely.
So if it's native plant, native trees, that's great because that's sustainable. That's what grew here. It's okay to have mesquites and ironwoods and creosotes and cacti and to be able to use some of that actually in cooking or medicinal, prickly pear or whatever is great. But and because you can also cut your water completely off if you are able to re-veg that material correctly. But in addition to that, any other plant in my mind should be an edible plant. Grasses, if you got a play field, great. If not, why are we watering them? But putting in trees that are from the tropics that don't bear fruit, that require lots of water, doesn't make a lot of sense. So the beginning of what we do is in the STEM garden, which is really more of it's really, if you look at it, it's an outdoor laboratory. And a lot of schools don't even have laboratories anymore, but with this, it's a hands-on learning, and the concept of STEM or STEAM allows you to take whatever it is you're teaching and adapt it. What you did at Gila River is amazing because you started to talk about what, when I was a kid, they call it social studies or whatever, right? But you were really you were talking about the cultural history of, how did this all get here? What are we doing? Where are you from? What are you doing? And the ideas of the Canal System, but the Three Sisters and getting people back in touch with what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, this is kind of a crazy thing. If you read the book Guns, Germ, Steel, I don't know if you've read that. It really talks about the fact that agriculture, and we got into modern agriculture, the one advantage, there's several advantages of it, but one is less of the population has to engage in manual work so that it allows people to do other things like, mathematics or engineering or programming or arts, right? However, the downside of that is we all have to eat. And we all have to know where our food comes from, and we all have to know how it's grown. And if in today's world, 80% of us now have moved into urban environments. That's why we have urban farming education. And because of that, we've lost touch with what food should taste like, how food is growing and how it should be growing. And I think if we can educate kids, and this is why we're in the schools, and they can go through an entire system, all from preschool to the end of high school, they have we change the buying practices of the consumer. Because at that point, the kids they understand that sugar may not be the best thing in the world, processed foods may not be the best, alcohol or sodas and all the stuff that we're feeding ourselves, they at least understand what that nutritional impact is. If they choose to not follow those practices, that's one thing, but at least they have been exposed and educated to it. So that's part of the cool part of what we're doing. So when you're doing it, are you guys kind of the leader in the Roosevelt district then? Is there any other gardens that are going on?
We would like to say that we are definitely the leaders, but there is another school. Lassen actually is in our district, and they have a garden that they've been working on. They are a little farther ahead. They've been working a little longer. That is the actual focus of their whole school. And so that's one of the reasons I've been talking to the principal over there, Brian Lockwood, and he kind of inspired me to look to move our garden forward to keep it more sustainable so that we could find resources for that. And this was a great time for us. Sunland is being rebuilt. Our school was built in 1953.
Yeah, I know a lot of those Roosevelt schools. I think I went to one of the schools, and that principal looked at me and said, "You want me to put in a garden? I don't have enough money to replace the roof that's leaking or whatever." And I was like, two different things. But
well, luckily, our community has been very generous with our bonds and overrides. And so we've been able to, they rebuilt Valley View in our district, and then they just rebuilt CO Greenfield. And so Sunland is next on the list. And so we're actually in the planning phases.
Great.
And so that's been a great discussion with our architect, Orcutt Winslow, as well as our builders, which is Chase, that we want our garden and we want actually our third grade to have access to the outside.
And the landscape could be a bit of a foodscape if they use the right plants, right? So,
Absolutely.
Right.
well, that's all cool. One of so you've just started with I don't even know how much of our system we've put in. Have you put in the bags on the ground or in planters, or what have you done?
Yep. So they are in planters. So we have 8 garden beds that
Yeah,
are
raised beds.
raised beds.
Okay.
And then they installed the irrigation. And so we've got the soil put in at this point, and we're gonna start planting. And we have our big garden kickoff for our community, partnered with Urban Farming on Saturday, December 16th.
Oh, great. Now,
But right next to it, we have a compost.
have we started compost?
Yes.
That was the next thing.
We have
So
we
you
have started, and we are in the process.
Yeah, so what happened was that my old garden from last year that I started was still was still dry and kind of like beat up from being around so long, but it served us well because we grew strawberries last year.
Oh.
And we grew
Strawberries grow well.
sunflowers and cilantro, and the kids were able to taste all that straight from the garden. It was a lot of fun. But anyways, the beds were still there. And so when they came to install the raised gardens, they said, the garden beds, they said, well, we can keep that and we can turn that into a compost
Sure.
area.
There's so many different ways to do it.
Yes, and so.
And we haven't started
really
with the
good.
worms yet, though.
No.
No, we have not started with the worms
Okay.
yet.
Yeah.
We did the lesson with the worms, though.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, they're good workers, the worms.
Yes,
And
they are.
They are.
They expand, exponentially if you feed them right. So that's the kind of the cool thing. I want to change it over a little bit. You guys started exchanging with the African students from Malawi. Have you gotten into that yet?
So we haven't actually started connecting with them
No.
yet. So last year I met Kim at a STEM cafe. And so I had connected Kim with Miss Matus so that they could connect and get started. And at the time, she was out of the
She
country
was in
for a
Tokyo, I
while.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
She's in
we
Malawi
saw-
right now.
Absolutely.
Oh.
So
I'd like to be one of my own
Whatever you
children,
want to play.
someday.
yeah, so so that's the goal, is that we're going to start connecting with the students in Malawi. So our students currently are working on raising some money so that we can help support the school in Malawi to provide solar panels.
Right, which is cool.
Yeah, so we're doing a penny war, and the students are getting very into it. We have it broken up
Yes.
into grade bands, and so in a penny war, pennies are positive, and then your silvers and your dollars are negatives. And so,
No, just silvers are negative.
oh, I'm sorry,
yeah.
just silvers are negatives. So right before school starts, the kids can run around to the other teachers and put silver into their jars, and that takes their point totals down.
Yes, and yesterday I was bombarded. I was bombarded in the
So
morning.
it's a bit of a math thing going on.
yeah.
I don't even know if I understand it.
Yep.
So we all have our penny jar, right? So pennies are good, and I had some of my third graders from last year, which are now fourth graders. They came in the morning and they said, "Ms. Matus, we're here to sabotage you." And I said, "Oh no!" I said, "But you love me," and then they said, "Yeah, we do. That's why we're here." And so they came in and they dropped us some quarters, which are negative, would bring my points down. And so they dropped us some silver and everything. So then the kids said, "No, they can't do that." So they dug through their stuff and took out some quarters and nickels that they had. And they said, "Can we go do it back to that?" Yeah, go ahead, go. So yeah, it was fun.
So then we're going to have winners from each of the grade bands. So it's K through 2 is competing, 3 through 5, and then our 6th through 8th graders are all competing. And so we're going to have a winning class, and it's a very competitive.
So generally, the older kids win those things, or not necessarily?
It depends. So when you make it a competition like this, the junior high they get really involved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sometimes if it's just
They know how to cheat a little.
yeah, you know,
Raid mom's purse
Very
before school.
competitive.
sometimes
Yeah.
if it's just about bringing things in, junior high might not be as into it, but when you make it a competition, they're going to be probably the highest classrooms in the school.
You know, it's kind of funny because I'm not an educator, although with the company we do education,
Yeah.
but I have people who know what they're doing. And I guess I'm finishing up a few books, you know, one on vermicompost, one on urban farming, one on compost, and another on landscape. So it's, I guess somebody might learn from some of that stuff, right? But, and my mother taught for 34 years, second grade, you know, so I know that cycle. But I remember in engineering, I would take a calculus class and then I'd fail it. Then I'd take it again. Then I'd fail it, and then I'd pass that one, and then I'd take the next level and the next level. But I didn't have, you know, necessarily that great a foundation in the math. And so I had one professor, and it is kind of interesting how, like, one teacher can change the destiny of a person, right? And I had one professor who was a PhD, I think he was a PhD mathematician, but with the PhD was in teaching, and which was the big difference. In engineering, I got people from all over the world teaching engineering. I couldn't even understand them, and I certainly couldn't understand what they were. It was all abstract, and so that's kind of why we like the STEM, because it takes an abstract concept, makes it concrete. But the other thing that you just reminded me, that's why I say it, is this teacher came in and he put everything we did on a point system. And his work wasn't super over the top difficult concepts. He wanted to simplify and break them down. But everything he did, the homework assignments, this discussion in class, everything we were graded on, he gave us these different points or merits that would affect the grade, and it wasn't just a typical grading system. And he explained it that it was this reward that you're getting from. It's basically the gaming that you're doing right now, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what that is. So, and it kind of works. And in the meantime, you're learning as you're doing it because you're engaged in it, right? And that's what we're talking about with these gardens.
Yeah.
So what do you visualize the new campus could look like?
Oh, I have so many dreams about what the new campus will look like. I really am excited to see the work that our architect and our builder is going to put in. So, I mean, one of the things that I love is having access to the outside. And so I want our students to be able to, and our teachers to be able to teach inside and out. And so, you know, in my ideal world, we'll have areas of campus where the students can go outside, they can learn, teachers can teach outside. We'll have real world applications for STEAM that can be both inside and outside of our campus.
So do you guys get a little feedback on what that school's going to look like, or is that?
Yeah, we do actually. So we're starting. We have a steering committee, and we've been meeting to share our input. So at this point, what we've been doing is determining the location of the buildings. Because right now our campus is set up so that each individual like grade band is a separate building. So there's like 9 individual buildings, and so we've been talking, you know, and we've been figuring out where we're going to put it. Is it going to go out on our north fields, or is it going to go in the center of campus? And so, because we're not relocating our kids, so the kids will be there during the construction. And so they just yesterday proposed that they're going to start building on the north field. And so it's probably going to be in multiple phases. But the administration building and the student building will be built starting. They'll be breaking ground hopefully in May. But the next part then is that for us to give feedback on what we want the outside to look like. I would love to have an amphitheater for the class. Love to have a garden. I would love to be able to do assemblies for the whole school outside in an amphitheater. I think that would
Excellent.
be wonderful. So,
Yeah. The phasing of the construction will be a little bit disruptive, but kind of fun for the kids too, I guess. Is,
Right.
yeah,
to
Yeah.
be able to see it. I hope maybe they'll be able to take them on little tours.
they will
I
actually.
don't know if the insurance companies.
Actually, they do. So with permission slips,
Yeah.
we're able to set up tours for the kids to go through. So
That's pretty good.
That's something that.
So, do you
Chase-
visualize a common garden, or do you visualize gardens for preschool through first grade, and then gardens for third to fourth, or how do you visualize the garden program looking like?
Well, I don't know my principal over here, but I'm just like, as far as third grade is concerned, we wanted to make sure that we had our little, 8 planters out there, and so we could keep going with our standards because there are science standards that go along with our garden.
Sure.
But we can accommodate for the whole school.
Right. So we have one of the things we're doing, because that's our goal, is honestly a little ambitious, but we want to see a garden in every school. And the concept right now is that we have third grade to sixth grade is our plot of sunshine. Then and Joe, let me see. This is Peter and Kim. They come up with all these names that I can't even remember. I think it's something with pails for preschool through second grade, and then the next level and the next level. So what we're doing is taking state curriculum and we're tying it into what we're doing, and then Jessica is turning it into lesson plans and into labs,
Yes.
so that it's all usable, doable stuff, which is kind of the purpose of what we're doing. I have to ask if they're incorporating arts or not in that. But again, ideally, what we evolved to be able to do is each grade has its own, 1.0, 2.0, at every level of how we're incorporating curriculum with that particular garden. Because, by the time we're done, I call them the overarching principles or methods of climate smart agriculture. It's tying in world issues. We had talked
Yes.
about that. So we have drought, right? We have breakdowns in community. We see wars popping up. There's always a war.
Yeah.
Right, and people, fighting, and that doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. And we know there's the population continues to grow, resources are shrunk. There's a battle that's predicted to be over water worldwide in the 2040s. So when we're talking agriculture, we're at a STEAM or STEM level. It is local, right, and it's right hands-on. It's learning your curriculum in a better way, right? So it's a technique, really. It's concrete to abstract, so that kids get it, But when we're done with the whole program, the concept is that kids understand the concept of community at a local, regional, national, international level, and they understand that we have really one world ecosystem, and then we have smaller ecosystems where we are. And that's kind of our goal and what we're trying to do. And like I said, we're a little Trojan horse going in one school at a time to be able to do that. So you've done it now with the Gila River, tribe down there where they are going through the entire school level.
Yeah.
So how does the education kind of change? Because you can't teach kids right off the bat or talk to them about, problems of food sovereignty or whatever that's going to go over their head, right? So, how do you see it?
Actually,
How do you see it going?
I had a situation teaching social studies the other day, as we were talking about our gardens and talking about when we would be able to plant, and they were all excited about that. But I was talking about regions and climate. And one of them, a smarty little kid, he asked, "Is that like climate change?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And so that gave me a moment to kind of go into why climate change is important for them to know about, and how that would affect our food. Because one of the standards in science standards in third grade is the food web, so transfer of energy.
Yeah,
So
part of the
that-
overarching principles, right?
Exactly. So that it all ties in together. And so when we were doing the food web, I explained it by using the theory of the dinosaurs about how some scientists say that it's because of the asteroid, and the kids said, well, they got that part. They said it's the asteroid that killed them. I said, not exactly. It was the dust that covered the sun that made the plants die. So if the plants can't live, the herbivores don't have anything to eat. So then the carnivores don't have anything to eat. So that's what ultimately killed them. So that's what basically would happen to us if we didn't have anything.
Yeah, so
plants.
I told you I was writing a timeline that is basically the planet, right, from 13.8 billion years ago, geologic time.
Yeah.
And in that time frame, there's been 5 major extinctions. And it's predicted that we are on the precipice of the 6th extinction. And some of them were more drastic than others. The one that the dinosaurs died, combination of volcano and asteroid, and that's a catalyst quite a bit of the time. This is the first one that that's anthropocenic, I think that's what we're calling it now, where it's man-caused.
Yes.
And that's just a reality, whether or not people want to deny that or not. We are accelerating what is a natural thing. So if you see the smog in the air and that kind of thing, so photosynthesis, of course, happens with sunlight, not necessarily with sun rays. Solar works with sun rays, so you don't need. It could be cloudy out, it can be dusty out, but for plants, they need the actual sunlight.
Right.
And as you drive into it from here to LA and you see that smog, you realize that, it's affecting something, right? And that's kind of these are kind of the cool concepts that the kids learn. They're not political, they're not religious, they're not social. It's just reality. It's science. And that's kind of the cool part of what the gardens could be. We're doing solar right now. We've got a solar dryer, and we'll bring one to the States, and then I want to re-engineer it because it's so expensive to ship it. But the solar dryer is kind of a slab the size of this room, and it's kind of looks like a tent, and it just it dries all your fruits and vegetables. So, and the advantage there is that when you're growing a crop, and sometimes you're pedological, you're growing, small quantities of stuff. But the reality is, if it's an acre and you're growing just green beans or whatever, you get a lot of green beans. So you got to figure out what to do with them. You got to clean them. You got to jar them. You got to sell them. You got to, and by drying them, it's just another form of preserving your fruits and vegetables. And Ernest in Africa, our guy over there, he's the one who brought it in, and he's been doing it. And I went to his house, and I mean the fruits and vegetables were just as good as you would. And the 95% of the nutrient value and stuff. So that's another thing that could be cool to incorporate. So let's talk about the design of this thing, and let's see what we can do to make sure you got enough space for all the different things we're doing. The composting,
Absolutely.
the worm composting, the ability to do one thing that we haven't brought to you guys yet is the microgreens. And microgreens are so easy. You take the soil, and it can be this size room or half the room. We just build a little 1x material. We put a little ground cloth in it. We put the soil in it, and then we seed it. We water it and seed it, and we put a piece of plywood over it. And within a week, and I think I could show pictures on this thing when post-production, but we just did it at our fundraising thing, and microgreens were like this thick and like 6 varieties. And I took a pair of scissors and I trimmed them and put them in baggies and brought them back for Thanksgiving and we use them for everything.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is the nutrient value in a handful of let's say it's a broccoli microgreen, the nutrient value in one handful is equal to a whole head of broccoli.
Wow.
Wow.
And the fact is that it's a great teaching tool because you're doing it inside of 10 days. So that's another little garden we can bring in. And it's so everything you're talking about is like kind of inspires me, right? And the concept of the food web being taught is like kind of unheard of. I never learned about that when I was a kid in school. I had to read about it later. And the food web there's two food webs, right? There's one for oceans and waterway,
Right.
and then there's the other one for soil.
Yeah.
And so we have microbes, protozoa, no, not protozoa, but we have bacteria and sisimites and fungi that are the kind of the building block, the
Yeah,
base
foundation,
layer.
yeah.
And in the ocean, it's plankton and zooplankton. But it's crazy what's happening with the earth, and this is one of the things. With all of us, we wear plastic clothing now, right?
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, 2/3 of the clothing is no longer natural fibers. So every time you wash a sports outfit, a shirt or whatever, you have like 1 million of these tiny little needles, right, that come off that fiber, and then when the wash, it ultimately gets into our waterways, and the problem is that it mimics, it's biomimicry in reverse. It mimics the plankton and the zooplankton.
Oh.
So the next species start to eat them, then the next species and the next species,
Yeah.
until we eat it.
Yeah.
So we literally are starting to eat our own clothing.
Eat our own clothes.
That's kind of a crazy thing, right? But with what we're doing, which is land-based right now, we take in a smear or slide of our compost, and we can take, your regular soil out there, which is not soil, it's more dirt.
It's dirt.
And we can put a slide on that microscope. And I don't know if we brought the microscope out here, if he's doing it.
Jessica did.
So you could see, like, there's life.
Yeah.
And to tell a kid that there's more life in a handful of that compost than in the above ground in the city of Phoenix is pretty powerful stuff, right?
Yeah.
To understand that life process. So
Right.
it's really is kind of cool that, you're teaching that right now. And, just think of all the different things that we can incorporate with what we're doing,
Right.
So,
Not to mention the art concept.
yeah, let's talk
Because,
about how you incorporate art with this.
Well,
So art is a lot of things, right?
yeah.
What is art?
It's like I'm an artist at heart too. So, but like we said, performing arts. You have kids. You gotta do something that's gonna be more concrete. So so I go to teaching. But anyways, in the classroom, I incorporate art by using the diagrams and by making also for them to elaborate on like the water cycle and just things like that. Just like you just make it a part of their learning so that they can have more of a visual of what's really happening. And
Another idea is like talking about like designing the space that you want your garden to look like. I mean, that's that's art, right? So
Of course it is.
what do we want?
Planning and it's-
Absolutely. So those are the different aspects.
and
that
we
can
even
incorporate.
painted and decorated our garden.
Absolutely.
Being able to do a mural on a wall, and that
Yes.
kind of thing. But really, if you think about art just depicts society,
Right.
culture, right? So you can experiment when you with different cultures. You can grow food from different parts of the world. You can look at their culture, and you can look at the art that they created in those cultures.
Exactly.
You can look at it over a period of time. I mean, there's so many different, and dance is just another form of art. Music is, right? And what's interesting, what connects us all is that we all have to eat. So it is our base industry. There's without agriculture, there's no food. There's enough food. There's none of us. So there's a base industry involved. But it's also, food is and the concept of agriculture really does parallel, what happened in culture. And so the ability to re-explore some of those things through that garden. And when we normally talk to people the first time out, they're like, why do you put in a garden? And oh my God. And I'd go to schools and they'd be like, well, in Roosevelt, I think was one of the school districts, or maybe it was close to Roosevelt. But anyway, I remember I was like, well, and I didn't really have a ready answer for why do you put a garden in? To me, it was like, duh, why would you ask a
Why
question
not?
like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, so I had to really think about it. And we came up with, I think, 5 different things. And one thing is the ability to sustain yourself, right?
Yes.
And so if things get bad, you have subsistence
Right.
farming. And
Absolutely.
51, here's a cool statistic, right? 51% of the world does not use industrial farming. 51 of the percent of the world feeds itself through subsistence, and that is just, hunting, fishing, but it's also growing, and it's usually rain-fed agriculture, and it means that you're not growing in excess to sell. You're just growing it to feed yourself, your family. 51% of the world is able to do that without really the benefit of having these classes that you guys are teaching to teach them good sustainable techniques that can increase their yield and still and take care of the environment a little better, So the other cool thing is 51% of the farmers on the planet are female. That's something you guys maybe didn't know.
I didn't know.
But
Didn't know that.
but it's interesting what you learn about the world when you get into this entire process here. So what's the schedule for when the school gets complete?
So they are going to break ground as probably the day after kids end this year, which would be Memorial Day weekend, right?
Is the entire school closed or a portion? Is it being
Nope.
phased?
So they will. So our field right now is where we have a big north field, and then we have a little bit of a playground, some basketball courts out there. So that part will be closed off. But it's blocked by our cafeteria. So basically, we won't enter that side of campus, but the rest will stay open and functioning. And so their goal is to have it open for the 2025-26
That first
year.
phase. And then once the first phase is done, they engage in the second phase.
Absolutely. So
Depending on funding rounds and things
absolutely,
like that. Right?
absolutely. So we'll be going back out for a bond and override in November of this next year, and so hopefully with our voters, they'll be able to see our school, Sunland STEAM Academy, is the only school in the Roosevelt District that is right on a major road. So we are on 7th Avenue. So everyone that drives into the city or drives home from the city drives right past us. So
cool.
I think it's going to be a really nice advertisement for the good things that
You
we're doing
become
in
the
our
model.
district.
That's pretty cool. So when we're looking to get more engagement from the school, are you guys capable of doing field trips?
Absolutely.
Of course.
So-
Yes, please.
Yes.
One of the companies I have that kind of feeds all this thing is our soil company, Soil, Seed, and Water.
Yeah.
So we do seed, and a variety of different vegetable seeds, and we're big into hemp and hemp seeds. But the soils, we start in dairies and we compost. And then in one of the dairies, we have a building that's an acre and a half. And under that is windrows with millions of worms.
Wow.
But everything we do is machinery. So we think that it's machinery used for the good. We can till more compost this way and distribute it, and then we blend different products. So we'll have to show you some of the products, but we'll do products for citrus or for stone fruit or turf if it has to be in there and that kind of thing. But it'd be great to have your kids come out, and it's some level of the schools. I mean, I guess each grade could come theoretically out, but it's a matter really of tapping them into what we're doing on a big, because if they can see what we're doing on a big scale,
Yeah.
and then they understand, because sometimes you're doing a little worm bin and you're like, what's this? I mean, how am I going to change the planet with this,
Yeah.
Then they see it on a bigger scale. So I'd love to invite you guys to come out.
We'd love
when
to.
you get a chance and see that. Let's see, what else haven't we covered?
Well, we haven't covered our performing arts. So we're really well known in our district for our performing arts. We actually we got awarded into a program, Disney Musicals in Schools this year. It was put on through ASU, and they selected 5 schools.
4.
4. So we were
You're
one
one
of
of 'em?
4 that
We're
was
one of 'em.
selected. And so Miss Matus actually is the stage manager for
the
the Jungle
production.
Book. So last year we put on
get
The
it all
Lion
going.
King. She really does.
Trying.
So last year we performed The Lion King, and our music teacher, who he through his music class, he teaches performing arts to our students, and so he was our director, and then our dance company, the choreographer for that, Miss Cons, she led the choreography for the production. So the two of them together did an amazing job last year on The Lion King.
So that was Disney for kids. No, Disney Junior.
That was Disney Junior.
And then I'm doing Disney musicals in schools for kids. So
Yep.
that's a different Disney program in association with ASU.
Now, have you guys ever, well, your facility is not set up for it, but outdoors being able to, growing up, I remember always walking to the park and seeing Shakespeare in the park, and that kind of thing. You're talking about amphitheater.
Absolutely.
Great setup for music and for even doing performances, dance performance, or even plays outside.
So that's
the right time
actually
of the year.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, we're doing our rehearsals. We're in the music room. We're doing our after school Jungle Book rehearsal, and in the this is all in the cafeteria. So then in the cafeteria, basketball is going on. On the stage is folklorico practicing, and then in one of the rooms next to the music room, they're doing guitar practice.
Yeah. So there's
So-
a lot going. We have a cafeteria that functions as a gym, as our performance
Multi-purpose room.
space.
Yeah, sounds like what I grew up with.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
So,
I remember as a kid, I snuck one of the keys from the teacher, and we used to go in and play basketball
absolutely.
after school.
So we're actually going to be showcasing in January. We're showcasing all of our arts, and so kind of that idea that you talked about. Now we're working to rent a stage so that we can have our performers perform, and we're going to have it kind of be, I don't know, it reminds me of like the idea of a street fair. So we're calling it Sunland
Right.
Glows.
Yeah.
And so we're going to showcase
And have it in the middle of the garden.
absolutely.
Yes.
You know, that would be the ideal situation moving forward. So
Last year we had in the garden setting, we had a 16 de septiembre celebration. So we invited all our parents to come over and bring food, and we ate in the garden. They were told to bring blankets to come.
So if you have, we talk about community. So the pillars of our business is communities first.
yeah.
And we have to, so when we select schools and we talk to schools, and the big part of the process is community, and community on a small scale is your school. So you got the cafeteria. Can you get in the cafeteria involved? So if you're growing cilantro, that day you feature a dish that has cilantro in the cafeteria. Same thing with tomato or whatever. You can go down the line, right? And that's kind of a cool thing. You just talked about bringing and engaging parents. Some schools do a good job, some don't. Do you visualize then when the garden is large enough that and or we turn the campus into a little foodscape a little more, that you guys would have the ability to have that celebration and bring the parents in and
course.
talk about the harvest?
Of course.
And it's one of those things where, you only maybe have a half of a bushel of carrots, but it doesn't matter. You can feed your
Right.
parents and that kind of thing. It's not so, and that's part of the thing with, again, answering the question, why do you garden? One is sustainability. One could be for a business model. Another one is that it's social. We do a lot of shelters, and you have people who are isolated. They've been battered and they're downtrodden and everything else. And we have this common place for people to come together,
Yeah.
you know, quietly or independently or whatever, but they actually come together in the garden. So that's another setup. And another thing is the aesthetics. You know, let's face it, a garden looks better than a dirt lot or
Yes.
a
Absolutely.
parking
Yes.
lot or whatever. So these are the kind of the reasons. What do you think from a financial standpoint? It's to my way of thinking, it's not an extra expense. I look at gardens. There's a little bit of capital needed, but the capital. When I had my agave farms on Central, it was I had to put in ditches, I had to put in roadways, I had to put in bathrooms, I had to put in fences, I had to put all this irrigation and everything. Well, the school already has that. So it's just a matter of allocating space.
Yeah.
And it's actually cheaper space because there's not a lot of structures. There's not a lot of equipment and machinery. And there's always a landscape budget and everything else. What do you guys, how do you visualize, you know, this? Because to make it sustainable, people have to be using it. And I notice across the country, people putting in gardens and one teacher leaves and then the whole thing's gone.
Yeah.
It's because they didn't develop the community, right?
Right.
So how do you guys see that?
So that's, one of the biggest things I was excited for with like the composting aspect of this adding into the garden is that we're going to be drawing everyone in. So we're going to be teaching everyone about what we need to compost, and then they're going to be helping. So we're going to have buckets set up in the cafeteria. We're going to have all of our recycling bins. Kids are going to bring it up to the office, and they're going to shred the paper to provide the nitrogen for it. And so it's going to be more
Good bedding material too for
absolutely
that and wood chips, right?
Yep. So it's going to be, and that's the other reason. It's if Miss Matsus leaves, it's still with our third grade,
Right.
And
we'll name a garden plot after you. Right?
she'll stay around forever. It'll be fine.
I'll be there forever.
When the third graders go up, they're going to come back down, and so we're building that. So year after year, we're going to be able to add more and more to
So
it.
part of the composting, if you think about it like this, is a society everywhere on the planet, humans make waste. You know, packaging, papers, books, newspaper, whatever it is, we have that. In addition to that, we put in landscapes and we have to prune and cut the grass and prune the trees and all that. We eat food, probably half the food by the time that dies in the field, in the farm, and or it dies in transportation or in storage. Then it comes to humans and we cook it and we only eat a portion of what's on our plate. We have a lot of waste. Across the board, there's waste that is, in my mind, that's the gold that we have to mine. And if we have sustainability and we're ecologically balanced, if we believe in this secular world that we need to be living in, we look at the microcosm of a school as a perfect example because you have landscapers and they got to prune the trees. Well, what do you do with that material? They cut the ryegrass in the winter. What do you do with that material? You have eggs and coffee and you have food waste that you can separate out. And what are you doing with that material right now? So the concept is the bedding is the wood chips and all the papers that you shred, the food that comes out of the kitchen, you can further break it down by putting it in a little food processor, slurry it, and then you can layer it. And you can use some animal compost. You guys aren't raising any chickens yet.
We are not.
Or anything yet.
Not yet, no.
But it'd be cool if you did to have a little bit of animal husbandry there. But if not, you get some of the compost that we have or manure we have, and then you just layer it, and then you watch the science behind it, right? So the reason you got to heat it up, and the way it heats up is, which is kind of crazy, is the microbes. So the microbial activity increases as you put all that stuff together, and you put oxygen and water in there. These microbes grow exponentially. They grow up 2 billion microbes in a handful, right? And that is what is the heating. And they're eating one family after another of microbes is eating each other. But at the end of the day, they're helping to decompose this product. and to create humus, which is what that's the nutrient that we all live off of, right? That's in the soils. And so talking about the food web, talking about composting, it really all ties together. And I love the fact that you guys are doing it. We'll look at different, methods of doing it as well. Small scale is great because then people can do it in their home. You could have a little bin and have worm farming under your sink at home, right? Or you can, but doing it a little bit larger scale is also kind of cool. And then, there's science that has to be performed. You have to make sure your temps are over 131 for a couple of weeks. You need to make sure you're turning it and watering it. And then in the cooling phase, you got to wait a couple of months. But you have that ability to do it all right there. And to me, that it's all about curiosity. And it's the same thing with the arts, right? It's about curiosity. It's about spiking that curiosity in these kids, giving them some basic understanding of how it works, and then they have the tool there. Then that's what we're giving them is that tool. And there's no reason to restrict learning to be indoors.
No.
That's part of what we're trying to do. Or to restrict gardening to be outdoors.
Like you were
And bring it
saying,
inside.
that to strike the curiosity in the kids. Well, when I first mentioned to them during Meet the Teacher Night that we would be working in the garden, they were so excited. They're like, we don't know, what it is. We want to find out what it is. And parents were like, oh, that's good. That's good. Last year, I had some parents that actually thanked me for bringing the garden into their kids' lives because for them to know where food actually comes from, doesn't come from McDonald's, and also because either one of the parents works in landscaping or to have, to have their
it's
own garden.
it's also one of the last reasons that we garden is ecotherapy. So if you have kids that they're on the spectrum or special needs or whatever, it's a calming, and it's kind of a proven thing that soil itself, good soil, I would say, is chemically changes, our attitudes and it calms us down. And when we talk ecotherapy, it really works with people who might not have all the senses. They may be blind. And you guys were talking about you have a sound garden.
Yes.
I call that a sensory garden. So it's great. No reason not to build a garden that has that has a lot
Textiles
of
and textures.
tactile feel to it, different plants and textures, to have wind chimes in there to be able to hear, smells by the different things you're growing. It all works out pretty well. And we haven't even talked about biology other than the microbes and the food web, but we can go on forever and ever and ever. I do appreciate you guys coming all the way out here to East Mesa today to talk about what you're doing, and I'm excited about what you're doing, and I hope we can be of some help to you guys as you're going forward. I give you each a parting gift. I don't have it right here, but I have a bottle of wine that I can give you, and you can, if you're not wine drinkers, give it away, but it's wine we grew.
Oh, wow.
Grapes for, and we had bottled, so that's one of the things we do. But Amanda Hicks, principal, teacher,
Consuelo Matus.
Consuelo Matus, but teacher at large. She teaches everything, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate your time today, Sunland STEAM Academy, and love to have you back on this podcast. And I'd like to see what you guys are doing, and hopefully we can make a big change in the environment that you guys have going on.
Definitely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.